This is the Gutsy Health Podcast with Janique and Tristan Roney. Hey guys, welcome back to the Gutsy Health Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Happy June. Is it June yet?
It is June.
Oh, okay.
And this will be released in June too.
So. Oh, that's right. It's coming out like the end of June.
Yeah.
Happy solstice. It's coming up pretty close to solstice, right?
I love the summer solstice.
So speaking of summer.
Yeah, there we go, babe.
All right. You're probably starting to spend more time out in the sun. And if you've got kids, your kids are probably spending a ton of time out in the sun. Hopefully they are.
Yeah.
But we want to talk about how you can keep your kids safe.
Right.
A safe way.
I want to share a story. Yeah. I think it was like earlier in February. I was talking about Cecilia's face cream from Honestly Essential, the anti-wrinkle. And I had someone ask, why don't you put like sunblock in it? And I was like, ew, why would you want to do it? Like it literally in my mind, I'm like, gross. Why would I want to put sunblock in this? Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that there were people in the world that are appalled when you don't use sunblock. Mm-hmm. Like that literally blew my mind. I had no idea this was like a socially offensive thing. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of delved into this and I was like, guys, why are we so obsessed with sunblock? Mm-hmm. I didn't realize this was a product of our programming in society. And so we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about...
Well, and can we talk about why, like where the programming comes from? Because I think there's two really good reasons why people think that they need sunblock on their face all the time.
Go ahead.
And the rest of their body too, right?
Right.
Well, for one, because we've been taught to believe that the sun causes cancer. And we're going to get into that in a lot more detail. But the other is that we have been taught to believe that the sun causes our skin to age prematurely.
Right.
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 And so really a big part of this is vanity and people believing that if they don't have sunblock on all the time, they're going to look old when they're still young.
Right.
And then they won't be physically appealing to other people anymore.
Right.
Right. And maybe there's something to that.
Well, you can absolutely overdo it. If you're in like a tanning bed all day, every day, like, yes, you're going to get wrinkles faster. There's a happy medium. There's the word that you love, hormesis.
I love hormesis.
Where you just add just enough stress to make it stronger.
Right.
So just enough sunlight to make you healthier, to make your skin look younger.
Yeah.
All that jazz.
When I was in high school, they made us watch this video of this like 60-year-old woman who had just been obsessed with tanning her whole life. And she looked like an alligator. Oh, like her skin was so destroyed.
Like leather-like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she talked about how she just ruined her life by being out in the sun.
That's overdoing it, you guys.
Well, and there's a reason though. It's not just that she was out in the sun. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
It was the imbalance.
Yeah.
Not in the amount of time in the sun, but in the nutrient system that was going on. We'll get into that.
Okay.
So maybe let's get into it.
Let's dive into it. Can we first talk about this massive lie that the sun is actually dangerous to us? You guys, our universe literally revolves around it.
Well, our solar system.
Our solar system. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
We don't know it. The universe revolves
they
around
have their
it.
own
It's
sun.
a little mysterious.
But like our solar system, literally our planet revolves around this. If it weren't for sun, there would be zero life. Just think about that for a second, because if it weren't for sun, we would have no food. If we had no food, we would have no energy. If we had no energy, we'd be dead. We just wouldn't exist. Like, what do I mean by that? So let's and I love this part of like, bacteria and cells and whatever. But if it weren't for sunlight hitting plants, and they have that organelle called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts literally convert sunlight, the chemical of energy, the sunlight energy, into an energy-rich organic compound called starch or plant matter, and we eat plants.
Is that different from chlorophyll?
Chlorophyll is, I don't know, actually. Chlorophyll is the green stuff in the plant, but the chloroplast is the organelle in each cell.
Gotcha.
So it like plants literally convert sun to food, and then we eat that.
Yeah.
So
we do.
We're eating sunlight every single day. And when you're like, well, I'm a
carnivore. I don't eat plants.
Well, you're the animals that you are eating ate plants. So there you go. So it's just a conversion train of sunlight.
Right. Ultimately, though, all energy is coming from the sun for that reason.
All of it. So it makes perfect sense that this is something that we absolutely need, not just to feed us, but to keep us alive.
And beyond that, we know that human beings do well in the sun because they didn't have a choice for so very, very, very long. Like, do you really believe that human beings were hiding out in their huts for, 18 hours a day, waiting for the sun to get low in the sky?
Right.
No way. There's no way. They were out in the sun. In fact, they probably didn't like being indoors because that usually there was fire and it was smoky and not pleasant, or it was really hot.
Yeah.
So they would be out and about doing their hunting and gathering or whatever it is that they did.
Right.
And they were in the sun a ton and they did fine with it.
Right.
And that went on for years and years and years until we developed these really comfortable indoor settings with air conditioning.
Right.
And now suddenly we hate going outside.
And fake light.
And we'll get into that too.
And our bodies are like, what are you doing to me?
Right.
Because think about it, and again, some of you might believe in evolution, some of you might not, but it just makes sense. Like, we evolved to survive from sunlight into sunlight, and
not just survive,
but thrive.
Yeah.
Like thrive. Like, our immune system literally depends on sunlight.
Yes.
There was a therapy practiced by doctors between 1880 and 1940 called heliotherapy, which is literally a Greek. Helio means sun in Greek, and it's sun therapy, and they use that for all kinds of ailments and diseases, all kinds, skin disorders, high blood pressure, infections, viral, and it's literally because you're boosting the immune system.
Right.
And so
how would you feel if you weren't feeling great and you went to your doctor and your doctor was like, "Oh, I know exactly what you need. Go outside. Go outside." And you're like, "Wait, that's it? Like, really? Right. That's all?" "Yes. Go spend more time in the sun." And then you do it and it works. Right. What?
Yep. Cheapest therapy ever, right?
Wait, why did they stop doing it though? Well, why don't they recommend that anymore?
Well, we shouldn't talk about that, because sometime around the 1920s and 30s, that's when medicine started taking over the world, and the culture around medicine completely changed. And so old practices, which were the working practices, became old and archaic. And they started going towards more medical.
So what medicine. I'm hearing you say is that they couldn't capture the sun in a pill and sell it for a ton of money.
No, they couldn't.
That's a familiar story.
So they demonized it and then sold you the lotion that would help you protect yourself from it.
That might be a cynical view of it, but that is how it played out, right? They, as soon as it was no longer useful for them, they at least stopped recommending it. Right. And then, interestingly, melanoma rates started going up 50 years ago. And melanoma, for those of you that don't know, that's cancer of the skin, specifically of the melanocytes in the skin, right? And the melanocytes are responsible for producing melanin. Right. Melanin is what makes us darker when we are exposed to the sun, right? It causes us to tan. Yeah. And so with the theory here, the idea that they're pushing on everyone is that the more exposure to the sun these melanocytes get, the more likely they are to kind of go haywire and turn cancerous. And then bam, you have a melanoma. And melanoma is very aggressive. It loves to dig its way deep into the skin, get to the bones, and spread like crazy, right? So we should be afraid of it, I guess. But
we should.
But this all started 50 years ago, right? It didn't start 100 years ago. It didn't start 200 years ago. What was different? What did we start doing differently 50 years ago?
A lot of things.
We didn't start going out in the sun more. In fact, if anything, we are out in the sun less than ever, and we still have the highest skin rate cancers ever in the history of humankind. Right. And by the way, it has nothing to do with changes in the environment. Because that's what a lot of people think, right? Well, there's a hole in the ozone layer. The sun is hotter than it's been before. No, that's not what's going on. They've done a study on it. And that study found that it has nothing to do with environmental changes. Yeah. This was in 94. Yeah. So it's not that. Right. So what is it?
Well, tell us. Tell me, Tristan.
Okay. Well, it does have to do with the sun. There's no question about that. But the sun is not the culprit.
No.
The sun is simply the last domino.
Right.
When all the conditions have gotten just wrong in our body.
Yep.
And so, to accuse the sun of being the cause of cancer is like accusing our utensils of making us fat.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
They may have taken the food into our mouths, but they have nothing to do with it. It's the same thing with the sun. Right. In fact, up to 25% of melanomas have nothing to do with sun exposure.
What do they have to do with?
Well, there are other factors there, but I want to really lay into this concept that if you can get melanoma without even being exposed to the sun, then there's something weird going on there.
Right.
Maybe it's not about the sun per se.
Yeah. Can I read this really fast?
Yeah.
It's true that overexposure to the sun can contribute to skin damage, but
Absolutely.
underexposure can be far more detrimental to health. We require optimal exposure to sunlight. A life of moderation in all aspects is a healthy one.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't think moderation is the answer in this case.
Right.
I think intelligence is the answer and balance.
Dosing your sun exposure really smartly.
Well, yes, but not just dosing it, but balancing out your sun exposure with protective factors.
Right.
And I'm not talking about SPF.
Right.
Oh.
And we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So, by the way, the American Cancer Society agrees with that 25% number. They think it's more like 14%, but they still concede that there is a not insignificant amount of melanomas that have nothing to do with the sun, right?
Interesting.
So let's talk about how modern living has contributed to this melanoma explosion.
Right.
And that's really what's going on is, as tends to be the case with everything, the way that we're living as a society right now is toxic to us. How did we do that? How did we get to a state where literally everything that we do on a daily basis is toxic to us?
I don't know.
We're terrified of the sun, but we have no problem standing in front of a microwave.
Oh, I know.
Multiple times a day.
When you put it that way, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not really smart of us.
But seriously, and then we have scientists telling us that that's perfect. Right. Of course you should be afraid of the sun. It causes cancer. No, microwaves don't cause cancer. Right. That's non-ionizing radiation.
Right. I know, that's really ridiculous.
Which, you know what? I would say fine, except that their advice isn't working.
Right.
We're getting sicker and sicker and sicker in spite of them reassuring us that everything we're doing is what we're supposed to be doing.
All is fine. Don't look here.
Stay inside, wear tons of sunblock, enjoy your melanoma.
Right.
It's all good.
Well, what's really interesting was, sorry to divert, but with the whole COVID thing, there was research showing that lack of vitamin D led to higher infection rates with COVID
and more severe outcomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but what were we telling people? Stay inside.
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding? Go to the beach.
We were shaming people for doing that. We were shaming people for going out and hiking.
We were arresting them. That's what we were.
We were literally,
yes.
We were arresting fathers for playing ball with their kids in a park where there was nobody else around.
Right. You guys,
come on.
This we've kind of lost our minds a little bit here.
Okay. So, and by the way, you mentioned this before and I kind of didn't go there, but I want to go there now. If we agree with this concept that the sun causes cancer, then sure, we can stay in our caves for the rest of our lives.
Right.
But how many diseases are associated with a vitamin D deficiency?
Right.
Because that's where you get your vitamin D. You get it from being in the sun.
Right.
Or these days you get it from cholecalciferol, which comes in a nice little pill. But
right. Can we tell people about your little melanoma?
Yeah.
So
sure.
You guys, Tristan for the past 15 years is very, very, very he does not go out in the sun. And yet while we were going through all of his cancer thing, we found out that he had a melanoma on his back.
It was an in situ, right? So that means a very new one. It hadn't gone below the surface of the skin.
Right.
Yet where on earth did that come from?
It wasn't sunlight for sure.
No, it was diagnosed in a February. I think it was February or March.
Yeah.
Granted, we are in Texas, but like I wasn't going outside.
No. And whenever you did, you always wore shirts.
And it was on my lower back, right? So, so how did that happen?
Well, and that was at the same time you were fighting off a different cancer too. So obviously there was there was an underlying factor that was causing your immune system to not really modulate
Was it
itself.
that my body wanted me dead? Because it kind of felt like it at the time.
I'm so sorry, babe. Oh, that's
okay.
that's a really dark joke.
I'm sorry.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Too soon for me.
All right. Well, so it wasn't that. What was it?
What was what?
Why did that happen to me?
Well, I think we've spoken about this before. Yeah, I don't think we want to talk about it again, though.
Oh, well,
do we?
No, I think we do because I think it's relevant. There's two really important factors that went into that.
Should we talk about the antibiotic use that you used?
No, I don't want to go that far. I'm talking about the melanoma specifically, and I don't think the antibiotics are as related to that. Okay. I'm talking about, for one, I burned a ton as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Like both as a child and as an adolescent. Mm-hmm. And apparently your odds of developing melanoma later in life skyrocket when that happens.
Right.
Ouch, that sucks. I wish I would have known that as a kid. Mm-hmm. The other though was that I was going through radiation treatments for my primary cancer, which was colorectal cancer.
Right.
And guess where they were blasting that radiation?
Your lower back.
Literally right on that spot on my lower back.
Right.
So that combination of things was, I don't want to say it was a given that it was going to happen, but it's not surprising in the least. Right. But let's get back on track. So if the sun by itself is not what causes cancer, then what are the necessary conditions for a melanoma?
Okay, tell us.
I've got 5, and granted, this is just my system here, but I think it's a pretty dang good system.
Yeah.
So number 1 is infrequent sun exposure.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm saying that in comparison to regular sun exposure. One of the worst things you can do if you want to protect yourself against melanoma is stay out of the sun most of the time.
Right.
So maybe this is a black and white thing. Like either you're going to be out in the sun regularly or you should just never go out in the sun. Mm-hmm. But if you do that, enjoy all of your other diseases that come from vitamin D deficiency.
Right.
And it's not just vitamin D. You're going to get deficient in a lot of other really important things that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Right.
So it's not an answer, which means the only answer is you need to make sure you're getting regular sun.
Right.
But I'm ahead of myself. So the problem is not enough regular sun exposure. The second problem is burning whenever you are in the sun. Mm-hmm. That's kind of obvious.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be the case, right? You don't have to burn every time you go out in the sun.
Right.
If you burn when you go out in the sun, you did a few things wrong. Mm-hmm. One of them is you probably spent too much time in the sun for where you were at that point in your tan base.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Number 2, you probably didn't have the right protective factors in your system to keep you from burning.
And that's really important too, because there are certain vitamins that help your own body protect itself from radiation.
And we'll get to those. I don't want to give away the punchline yet because I want to focus on what's wrong first.
Okay. Let's go.
So the next thing, this one might break your brain just a little bit, but a major risk factor for melanoma is regular exposure to artificial light.
Okay, explain that.
What?
I know.
Fake light causes so many problems for us and we don't even realize it. One of the biggest is that it shuts down melatonin production. Mm-hmm. What's melatonin? It helps me sleep.
Yeah.
Yes, it does that, but it does so much more. Mm-hmm. Melatonin, in the context of what we're talking about here, is a cancer scavenger. Mm-hmm. It literally hunts down damaged cells to fix them, or if they've already become cancerous, it kills them.
Yeah.
How cool is that? When I was going through all of my treatments and we were finally starting to look at alternative options, one of the things that was recommended to us multiple times was for me to take melatonin.
Yeah.
And so I did for quite a while. Now, I don't recommend that for most people. I don't know if we've talked about that here on the podcast, but melatonin actually came up as a potential
therapy for
protective factor against COVID. Mm-hmm. And so we did talk about that, I think, on Instagram a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
But there are problems with taking melatonin because if you do it in high doses, it's a hormone, right? And so it has a whole cascade of effects in your body.
Right.
And if you're overproducing that through taking exogenous hormone like melatonin supplements, then you can throw off a whole bunch of delicate balances.
Right.
So if you can't just give yourself melatonin, then you need to protect yourself against the things that block your natural melatonin production.
Right.
And as I'm saying this right now, I'm wearing
red glasses,
these glasses that have red lenses, and I look like John Lennon.
You kind of do.
And I did this actually very recently. I just got these because I've been really digging deep into all of this natural versus artificial light things, how it affects your body in different ways. And I've come to realize how fundamentally important it is for us to protect ourselves against these things that block natural melatonin production.
Right.
For one, because of those cancer fighting benefits, but for two, because of the sleep benefits that come from having plenty of melatonin.
Right.
Now, you guys, if you know me, you know I suck when it comes to the sleep stuff.
He totally does.
I'm trying. I've been working really hard on it.
Like around 11 p.m., I'm like, babe, you need to go to bed. And then 12 o'clock hits, I'm like, babe, you need to go to bed. But we're dealing with the workaholic, so it's hard.
Right. And it's really bad. I shouldn't do it because I know how much sleep helps with everything.
Everything.
And depriving myself of quality sleep is in many ways just, it's destroying me. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on that. And I've got this ring that helps me to track my sleep. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to really realize there's a strong correlation between how much sleep I get and how I do the next day.
Yeah.
So kind of getting off on a little tangent there, but exposure to artificial light blocks melatonin production.
Yeah.
All those LED lights, all of those screens that you're looking at all day long and all night long, even more importantly,
right.
They're blocking that melatonin production and therefore increasing your risk of skin cancer. In fact, two of the biggest risk factors for getting uveal melanoma, which is melanoma of the eye. You've probably known someone or heard of someone who got melanoma in their eye and died because of it. It's one of the more dangerous because it goes right to the brain. The two big risk factors for this, well, two of the three biggest are welders and occupational cooks, basically people that work in kitchens.
Interesting.
Why?
Because they're indoors all day.
Because they're exposed to really high amounts of artificial light for long periods of time.
Yeah.
The cooks in particular, they tend to have pretty extreme hours, right? Like they're either getting up way before the crack of dawn or they're finishing work way after sunset.
Yeah.
And that whole time they're just being blasted with those really bright artificial lights.
Right.
And so their melatonin production is terrible. Oh, another big risk factor for virtually every disease, shift work. People who work overnight.
Yeah, that would be really hard.
Oh yeah. I used to, when I was doing the therapy thing, I would work with people who did shift work. Almost invariably. They had mood disorders.
Yeah.
They had digestive disorders.
Yeah.
They had like every problem in the book.
Chronic pain.
Yeah. There was one person in particular who like, he couldn't put on weight. He couldn't eat anything.
Yeah.
For the life of him, he couldn't. And he worked overnight.
Yeah.
And so I used to just beg him, just take a vacation and try getting regular sleep for a while.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, who knows if it would have helped or not. But anyway, so you've got to deal with that artificial light. We will talk a little bit more about that too as we get going. But there you go. So artificial light, terrible for melanoma.
Yeah.
Number 4. And we're talking about conditions that lead to melanoma, by the way, because I got off on such a tangent there. Breakdown of the endocannabinoid system and dysregulation of the endorphin pathways. That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
All right, so let's talk about the endocannabinoid system first. The endocannabinoid system is our natural cellular thermostat, so to speak, right? You may remember us talking about this on our CBD episode.
Yeah.
because CBD is a phytocannabinoid, meaning it comes from plants.
Yeah.
And it helps to balance out our endocannabinoid system, which is our natural thermostat, right? So it helps our cells to stabilize and balance themselves out. The other one, the endorphin pathways, you've probably heard of these before. When you exercise, you get endorphins, right? They help you feel good. Guess where else you get endorphin production?
Sunlight.
When you're in the sun.
Well, everyone knows that.
Yeah. If you've ever spent the day at a beach, you know that by the end of the day, there's going to be two things going on. You're going to be exhausted and you're going to feel so good.
Yep. And you're probably going to sleep really well that night.
Whenever we take our kids to the beach, that's exactly what happens.
Yep.
They are just ready to sleep as soon as the sun goes down.
Exactly.
And they're usually pretty blissed out.
Yep.
So both of these things, the endocannabinoid system and the endorphin pathways, are stimulated by being out in the sun.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to helping you feel good and sleep well, they also are really important when it comes to fighting cancer. Do you know how?
No, tell me.
They help cells know when it's time to die.
Oh, yeah.
And what happens if a cell doesn't know that it's supposed to die?
Turns into a cancer cell.
It becomes immortal, and not in a good way, more like zombie way. We get cancer cells that way, right?
Yep. Well, vitamin D does that too.
What?
Like it tells the cell when to die.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
that's sunlight.
Where do we get vitamin D? The sunlight, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the sun helps our body not create cancer cells.
Yeah.
Wait, but that's literally the opposite of what we're being told by everybody.
Right.
The sun causes cancer. Stay out of the sun.
Right.
It'll make your skin wrinkly.
Can I go back to the endorphins thing?
Yeah.
When we exercise, we release endorphins, and there's tons of studies. Well, there was one in particular where it studied stage 3 colorectal cancer patients post-treatment that were in remission, and those that exercised like pretty
Regularly or rigorously?
Probably both. I don't know. I was
rigorous exercise.
In my brain, I'm like, which one is it? I don't remember. They exercised a lot, and their reoccurrence rates was like 50% less than those that didn't.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was, and can you imagine a cancer drug that had 50% odds of like making sure cancer didn't come back?
Ooh, they would make so much money off that.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, they don't have to make really good drugs and they still make good money off of it. But
it's because they've convinced us that exercise is not that important compared to their chemo.
Right. So anyways, I just thought that was really interesting that exercising, getting, endorphins from the sun, like that's all really important, guys. Just be happy, right? Like go into the sunlight, be happy, exercise, all these things.
Right. So let's talk about the 5th condition of cancer causing melanoma inducing conditions.
Okay.
Number 5 is tissue calcium depletion. And this one is maybe a little different than even a lot of the people who agree with everything I've already said have heard before.
When we've spoken about this before in the immune system podcast, supplements for immune system.
Oh yeah, we did.
We released that in around the COVID time back in March, I think.
March sometime. So I'm going to re-explain though.
I think you should.
Because not everyone listened to that and you don't have to go back and listen to another episode to understand this one, right? So we need to get calcium into our tissues in order for calcium to be really beneficial to us.
Right.
Calcium is super duper important for a lot of reasons, but one of the best is that it's an immune booster, so to speak, right? Without enough calcium, we struggle to fight off
viruses,
all kinds
bacteria,
of things.
Yep.
But also we just generally have a hard time protecting our cells against all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So in order for us to get calcium into the tissues, 3 important things have to be in place. Maybe 4.
Okay.
Number 1, we need to have calcium in our system.
Yep.
But not just any calcium will do. It needs to be ionizable calcium.
Okay.
So if you've ever been given a calcium supplement or told to take calcium by a doc, it's probably not the right kind.
I see this all the time in the clinic. People are on calcium supplements and they still have osteoporosis or
they're taking something like Tums.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Don't do that. So calcium carbonate is what's in Tums. It's in a lot of different supplements, and it's no good because it's not ionizable. What makes calcium ionizable is that it's able to be pulled into the tissues.
Yeah.
Right. So if you take a calcium that can't be pulled into your tissues, where's it going to end up?
In places you don't want it to end up.
At best, it goes right through you and you don't do anything with it. At worst, it goes into your blood and it sits there. And what happens if you have a lot of calcium in your blood?
It gets thick.
It gets thick. And what happens when you have thick blood?
You don't feel good.
You get cardiovascular disease, right? You get blockages.
Yep.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
So we need ionizable calcium. There are 2 forms of ionizable calcium if you're going to supplement. One of them is calcium gluconate and the other is calcium lactate. Virtually every other form out there, no good.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
So check your calcium supplements like right now. Pause this, check your calcium, check your supplements.
But also, you don't necessarily need to run out and get calcium because calcium can also be found in good spring water.
Yeah.
It can also be found in unpasteurized raw milk. And it's, of course, very abundant in all sorts of plant foods. Right. So there's that first ingredient. The next ingredient we need is vitamin D. Hey, you're all covered there. If you go out in the sun, you've got vitamin D.
And it's free.
It's free and it's abundant. The more fair skinned you are, the more easily you produce vitamin D in the sun.
Yeah. So
if you have dark skin, then you probably need to spend more time in the sun even, which great. That's awesome. Do that. Right. Yeah. And then the third, there's a part A and a part B to the third ingredient. One of them is essential fatty acids, specifically linoleic, linolenic, and arachidonic acids.
And we get that a lot in fish, animals, butter. What am I missing?
I don't know, probably a lot of things, but those are the big ones, right? They help to pull the calcium. Oh, I didn't even mention what D does. Vitamin D helps pull calcium out of your gut and into your bloodstream. It's the calcium loader. Yeah. Without it, once again, calcium just goes right through you. Yeah. So then the vitamin D pulls it out of your gut, gets it into the bloodstream, transports it where it needs to go. And then the third step is we need to get calcium off that bloodstream train and into the tissues. And that's where the essential fatty acids come in.
Well, why do people need it in the tissues though? Explain that to them.
That's where the magic happens. Right.
That's where all the
you're not going to fight off diseases in just the blood. Right. I mean, granted, there are some diseases of the blood, so you do need some in there. Yeah. But if it's only in your bloodstream and you're deficient in all your tissues, yeah, you're going to have a hard time fighting off all sorts of bad stuff.
There you go.
Including just environmental damage from, say, the sun. I don't know. Right. It also, by the way, a lot of people that get leg cramps, they think magnesium is the answer. It's not always magnesium. Sometimes it's calcium. You need both, right? You need both in order to keep those muscles working the way they're supposed to work. Yep. Now, there's a large group of people out there, talking specifically to the Weston A. Price Foundation people, who believe that it's not the essential fatty acids that help balance out the D, it's vitamin K. And we get vitamin K from 2 primary sources, plants and animals. Yeah. Specifically, the leafy green plants tend to be very rich in vitamin K. Right.
You mean not goldfish?
Like the delicious cheesy snack.
Yes, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm kidding. Don't listen to me.
So vitamin K could also be a very important factor there. And, if you're eating real food, then you're probably pretty well covered there. Yeah. Eat real food. So that's the tissue calcium transportation network. You need all of that to happen in order for you to be protected in the sun. Yeah. Without that, you're more liable to get damaged. Right. So those are the 5 conditions. I'm just going to repeat them one more time. Not getting enough sun, burning whenever you do go in the sun, being exposed to artificial light all the time, not getting enough endocannabinoids and endorphins in your system, and tissue calcium depletion.
There you go.
That is the perfect recipe for melanoma. And that is basically how all of us live on a regular basis. Well, hopefully not the people listening to this, but as Western society, that is kind of how we roll.
Right.
So
what do we do?
What do we do?
Sunblock.
Yes, there you go. Just put sunblock on.
We're done. Bye, guys.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. You already know we don't like that though, because that's how we open the episode.
Yeah.
So why don't we like sunblock? Did we talk about that at the beginning?
We haven't. No.
Okay.
Well, there's UVA and UVB rays, right? Well, and when we wear sunblock, it only blocks UVB, but UVA is the one that causes cancer.
All right. So
like, it makes no sense. It's like, okay, so we protected ourselves partially.
Right.
How many people have actually looked for sunblock and looked for full spectrum sunblock?
Right.
I haven't, but I don't use sunblock a lot. So,
Right.
So that's an issue, guys.
So just to reiterate that, we've got UVA and UVB rays. The UVB rays are actually the protective ones because they stimulate vitamin D production. Yet the sunblock that we are buying
is blocking UV.
Blocks the good stuff, but not the stuff that actually causes all the damage.
Right. So we block the immunomodulator, the vitamin D, while we stimulate the damaging ray that could potentially cause a lot of damage.
So theoretically, possibly, by putting on sunblock, you're accelerating your risk of melanoma down the line.
Right.
Yikes.
So that's a good reason. Circling back to my first point, that's why we don't put sunblock in our face cream. Like, why would we do that?
Yeah, we don't want to block your vitamin D production.
No.
There's another reason we don't like it though, and that is there's all kinds of weird chemicals in those things.
Oh my gosh. And your organ is like, your skin's like the biggest organ, right?
And it absorbs everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't eat your products that you put on your skin, you shouldn't put them on your skin, period.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think there's stuff I'd be willing to put on my skin, but not in my mouth.
Like what?
Like mud.
Oh yeah, I guess. I guess. No, but what I'm saying is like lotions, like your face cream, like all those things.
So yeah, I think that's a good ideal.
Like, it's not going to taste good, obviously, but if you eat it, it's not toxic for you.
Now there are less toxic sunscreens out there, and the Environmental Working Group, I think, has a whole page or a whole like website dedicated to helping you find the ones that are the least toxic, right? Is that the group?
Also, Carlin on who's Just Ingredients Online, she has a whole blog post or Instagram post on non-toxic sunblock.
Yeah, so just.ingredients on Instagram has a bunch of information on that. But that being said, sunblock should be a sometimes used tool, not your answer. If you are slathering yourself in sunblock every time you go outside, you might as well not be going outside.
Yeah.
For the purposes of getting the benefits of sun exposure.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's all those chemicals you got to worry about. There's the fact that it's blocking the wrong UV rays. And then there's also this third issue that sunblock doesn't seem to be that effective, because in spite of the fact that most people use it, our rates of skin cancer keep going up and up and up.
Right.
In spite of the fact that the sunblock industry has been around for half a century, and they keep improving their products, supposedly, we're still getting more and more cancer.
Right. So it's good for short term, like not getting sunburnt. But as long as long-term health benefits, it's not that great. So we need an alternative option.
Right.
We're not saying don't ever use sunblock, because there are days when I know we are going hiking and there's going to be no shade.
Right.
I absolutely lather my kids up with sunblock.
But there is another option that can help you to decrease your reliance on sunblock even in those situations.
Right.
That we will talk about in a moment.
Like, are we talking about it right now?
In a moment.
Okay.
For now, I just want to point out why sunblock is not the answer.
Okay,
right?
keep going.
You can't be reliant on sunblock.
Right.
Because you don't need to be reliant on sunblock. There's a better way. So let's talk about the real game plan. If you can't just stay inside and you can't just put sunblock on all the time, then what can you do? Number one, get regular, frequent sun exposure.
Right.
And that's tricky for some of us, like us who live in the mountains in a fairly northern climate.
Right.
So
this is what we do though. This is what I do with our kids is when springtime comes along, like they are in short sleeves, like short pants. And I'm trying to get them outside as much as possible. Like not like 10 hours a day, obviously, but like for a couple of hours here and there when the sun exposure is not so intense and brutal.
Yeah.
And then I keep trying to do that because I kind of call that like their base coat. Right. Where they start to get darker because
the base tan,
the base tan, and you just keep improving on the base tan. Because if I just kept them indoors, let's say we were still isolating through COVID, and now all of a sudden it's June, and I took them outside, they would burn in like 30 minutes.
Right.
But we've been working on this for a couple months now.
Right.
Now they go outside for like a couple hours and they're between sunshine and shade. Yeah. And without any sunblock whatsoever.
Right. And here's what happened to me as a kid. I would be indoors like all the time because I was, really into World of Warcraft or something like that. And then books. And then my family would take me to Lake Powell, where there is
June and July,
0 trees for miles and miles around. There is no escape from the sun, and I would fry like blistering almost. Yeah, my sunburn would be so bad. That was the worst possible thing I could have done. Right. So don't do that. Now, even in our situation, though, what Johnny just described, I don't think it's good enough because we still have that half a year where there's no real meaningful sun exposure.
Wait a second. You need to back up because you need to tell everyone what you told me about that thing that you had with one of your girlfriends.
Oh,
you guys had a competition to see who could get like more tan.
It's not as sexy as it sounds.
No, I couldn't think of the word competition because once again, we are recording at 10:30 at night.
The best summer of my life growing up was the summer I was in a competition with technically she wasn't my girlfriend. Oh. That's a long, sad story. We'll get back to that another time. But
I want to hear the story now.
Not now. We need a glass of wine for that story. So anyway, we were in a competition to see who could get the better tan. Now, keep in mind, she naturally was much more olive-skinned than I was. I'm like very Northern European, my friends. But I was so focused that summer. I wanted to win so bad. So I would very, very carefully build up my base tan, make sure I never burned, because if I burn, I peel. There's no getting around that for me.
Quick question. Was there a pie chart involved on how you were going to win this? Because you're all about your charts and your diagrams and your plans. And so, okay, there wasn't.
No, I was just very, very careful about getting exactly the amount of sun that I could handle at one point before putting on any kind of sunblock. And then, gradually increasing my exposure over time. By the end of that summer, I looked good.
And you guys felt good.
I looked good, but more importantly, I felt better than I had ever felt growing up. Now, keep in mind that the years leading up to that, I had really bad IBS, right? Irritable bowel syndrome. And I was extremely anxious all the time. And I did not enjoy life. Right. I was generally did not enjoy my life at all. I enjoyed that summer. I felt good that summer. Yeah. I even enjoyed Powell that summer, believe it or not. So,
okay. Side note, you guys, Tristan still hates Powell.
I do.
He hates it with a passion.
Too many negative memories of putting aloe all over my poor destroyed skin.
So depressing.
Anyway, so kind of getting back to what we're talking about. Getting sun for half the year and then not getting it for the other half of the year is problematic. It's problematic. And I know that for most of us, maybe half of us, I don't know, that's the case.
So the solution is to buy a tanning bed. I'm just kidding.
That's not entirely off. The problem with tanning beds is they're not
going to be your solution.
No, but there are two really important things that can help. One of them is an infrared sauna. And granted, not everyone can just go out and buy an infrared sauna.
The other option is a house in Hawaii.
Well, that's also a little bit out of reach, right? So we're talking ideals here. Don't worry. We're trying to give you ideas for what you can do. Now, there is one that maybe is a little bit more realistic. They're not insanely expensive. They're called Sperti, SBERTI, vitamin D lamps. And they're basically UV lights. So they can burn you. Yeah. But they can also enable you to continue your sun exposure through the winter.
Yeah. How big are they? Are they big?
There's probably different sizes and things.
How come we don't have one? Are we going to go buy one?
We just got our sauna this year. Come on. We can't just buy stuff all the time. But it is on my list, especially before this next winter comes, because I think I'm done with the whole like not having sun for the entire winter.
So done.
So we either get one of those lamps or we move to Hawaii, and well, we're not moving to Hawaii.
No, we're not.
So anyway, the important thing though is regular, frequent sun exposure, so that you don't lose that melanin.
Right.
Right. And so that you don't lose out on that natural, real light. Number 2, minimize your exposure to artificial light.
And in the wintertime, that's hard.
It's hard, even not in the wintertime. If you work in an office that has fluorescent lights overhead all the time, there's not a whole lot you can necessarily do there. But there are things that you can do. Obviously, spend as much time as you can outside. Even if that just means like taking a 5-minute break every hour or so that you can get outside and see the sun.
Yeah.
Just stare at it, eat it, do whatever you can, breathe it in.
In Utah, it's so hard though, because it's so gray. It's great for
in the winter,
weeks at a time.
Right. So that's where the sunlight lamps can really make a big difference.
And the Hawaii house.
And the vacation house in Hawaii. Yes. For those of you who can manage that.
I'm kidding.
Another big thing that you can do is put a blue light blocking software on your computer and your phone. Now, what's cool is I think that the Androids and the iPhones now have that built in, where as soon as sunset hits, it turns on its own blue light filter, so that you don't get that blasting you, which is great. But that's not necessarily going to be enough, especially if you have one of those smart homes where every single light in the house is LED and it's like white light, right? Lots of blue light in there. I
know we've spoken about this in the past, but what we do at nighttime is as soon as the sun goes down, like we have mood lighting in our house. Like lamps are on, it's very yellow lighting and it's dimmed down.
In the winter, we use our fireplace if the dang thing's going to work.
Right.
That.
Right. And so like that's really important for us. And we've but then we're looking at our phones or our computer screens.
So here's where the blue blocker glasses come in, right? They will block out most blue light regardless of what you've got going on in the house. Right. And if you work in an office, by the way, all day long where you've got this blasting artificial light, then you might consider getting some daytime blue light blocking glasses so that you're not over blasted with blue light, which blocks melatonin production. Remember that, right? Yeah. The next thing is, actually, you just covered this one. Use natural light as much as you can. Right. Fireplace, sun, candles, those sorts of things.
No, don't use candles, because if you burn down your house, then you'll blame us. Please don't do that.
Things that look like candles.
Exactly.
And then here's another big one, and this is a hard one. I don't do it. Maybe you can. Rise and fall with the sun every day.
Yeah, that's really hard.
It works best if you live near the equator, by the way, but try it out.
Yeah.
Try it out. It can make a big difference. There are people out there who swear by these steps, these things we've talked about. They say they are the single most important thing you can do to turn around your health if you have chronic conditions.
Yeah, that's cool.
So look into it. We've spoken about the sun gazers before, right? Have we? I don't know. Maybe
we might have, but these people, they watch the sunset. There's like a specific time of day where you actually watch the sun go down, and it's supposed to like trigger your pineal gland. And that helps with like depression and sleep disorders and all kinds of things. My mom had a client where she suggested this to the client. This client hadn't slept properly in years, like maybe got like 1 to 2 hours of sleep per night. And now she started watching the sunset and like got her first 8 hours of sleep. And now that's what she does. And now she sleeps properly.
Yeah. So once again, these people, we're going to talk more about this group of people. They're obsessed with mitochondria, but they swear by watching the sunrise and the sunset. And they say that it makes just a world of difference for your health.
Yeah.
So once again, that's a little tricky for some people. Where we live on the side of a mountain, the sun doesn't come up until like
10.
Yeah, 10 o'clock.
Right.
So we'd have to go hiking.
I wonder, okay, this is late night thoughts from Johnny Grony, but I wonder if that's why we have such awe when we watch the sunrise and the sunset.
Yeah.
Like maybe it produces some kind of euphoric effect.
Yeah, maybe.
That, like how bees are attracted to pollen because that's literally their food.
Yes.
Like the sunlight, like if we weren't attracted to that, then, we would die. And so maybe we have this like deeply ingrained awe when we watch sunrises and sunsets where it creates this massive euphoria that we want to keep doing it over and over and over. It's a mechanism of preservation.
Yeah.
And that is my weird thought for the day.
Hey.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks,
I think there's something to it. But I am married to you, so I'm a little biased.
Thank you.
Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're both crazy.
You're a really good husband.
Okay. So the next thing that you can do to protect yourself against melanoma and sun problems is to boost your endocannabinoid system and your endorphin systems. So yes, be out in the sun more, but also like maybe there is something to this CBD stuff.
Right.
Maybe that can help make up some gaps from not getting enough sun. Right.
Yep.
And then the endorphin system, Johnny already talked about this. Maybe exercise is how you can do that.
Exactly.
Or sex or any of the other things that help you get endorphins. Laugh, right? Laugh more.
Right.
And then of course, melatonin production.
Sleep.
Right. Well, making sure that you're getting the right amounts of sleep, but also the blue light and all that fun stuff that we've already talked about.
Right.
And then number 4, the last thing that you need to make sure you're doing so that you are safe in the sun and benefiting from the sun is make sure your calcium distribution network is balanced and strong.
Yeah. So
now we can go into specifics on that one. If you are looking to supplement to help yourself with this, because sometimes you got to supplement.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have access to spring water or raw milk, or you don't feel like the calcium you're getting out of your food is really enough for you, because maybe like me, you have a majorly compromised immune system or have had in the past, then an ionizable calcium supplement could be really beneficial for you.
Right.
And
there's a standard process product called calcium lactate.
Yeah, there's a few companies that make calcium lactate, but standard process is the one that we use. And once again, it's the kind that can be pulled into your tissues. But here's what's really cool about this. Not only is it just helpful in general for making sure you've got enough good calcium in your system, it can specifically protect you from sunburn.
Yeah.
There are many, many people who swear by calcium lactate as their sunblock that they take internally. Right. And they swear that they do not burn when they have it.
There are some things that we do for ourselves and our kids when we go out in the sun, and we take vitamin E as well. I will give the kids vitamin C, or myself vitamin C, to help with any kind of cellular damage. But vitamin A, vitamin E, as you mentioned before, vitamin K is really almost like all the fat soluble vitamins, right? A, D is
C
the sunlight.
Is not fat soluble though.
Well, except for C. Yeah, that's water soluble. But
basically antioxidants.
E, K, yeah, exactly.
Right. So antioxidants will help there. But calcium prevents the damage from taking place to begin with, right? So you want to make sure you have that. Now, vitamin D, once again, you're getting that from the sun. You don't have to worry about that. But you do need to make sure that you can pull calcium into your tissues. Right. And you need to make sure that there's enough of that stuff to counter the vitamin D you're going to be producing. Because keep in mind, if you haven't been in the sun in a long time, you are just ripe for massive production of vitamin D. Yeah. Like you can produce 10,000 IUs of this stuff in 15 minutes if you are pasty enough. And if you got suddenly 10,000 IUs just running through your body, that's a really strong member of your tug of war team pulling the calcium into your bloodstream. Yeah. And that means you need an equally strong partner keeping it in the tissues. Yeah. So the essential fatty acids, once again, what we like for this is actually vitamin F is what it's been called since back in the day.
Yeah.
But Cataplex F is the product
you guys
that we use for that.
And just so you know, we're going to put together a list of these supplements that we're talking about, and you can find it at gutsy.ch/sun.
There you go.
So don't worry, you don't have to write these things down. Like we'll put them all together for you in a cart, and you can like keep and delete whatever you want or whatever you don't have. So Cataplex F is that fatty acid. So yeah, that reminds me, we give the kids the Cataplex E and the Cataplex F. And then you like to give them iodine if they're swimming in a pool, but that's
a wholly different thing. But
exactly.
But the other one that you might want to take care of, just to cover all your bases, is the vitamin K. And we like chlorophyll complex for that because it's literally green plant juice.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And it's awesome for a lot of reasons, but it can also provide some of that balancing effect on the sun's vitamin D production.
Now, if you are taking organ complex, you're getting some of that vitamin K in there as well. So don't worry about it.
Right.
You can take chlorophyll too, because it is just fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
Right. And that's kind of your natural internal sunblock if you're doing all of that. Now, let's say that you kind of don't gauge things very well and you end up burning. Then what do you want to do in that case? Once again, vitamin E is going to be huge, right? Vitamin E is really important there.
And vitamin C.
And vitamin C, of course, for repairing. And then
collagen. And then for repairing as well.
Sure. Collagen. And then two things actually that can be awesome for soothing a sunburn. You've probably heard of aloe. Having been burned a lot as a kid growing up, I can say it helps a little bit, but you know what helps a lot? There are two things. One of them is chlorophyll complex again. It comes in a paste form. Here's the problem with it though. It's green. It
stains everything.
It'll turn you green. You'll look like Kermit the Frog.
Yep.
But it will, if you've got a really bad sunburn, it could save your summer. It could save you from all sorts of pain.
Yeah.
So it's awesome that way. But the other one that's a little bit more reasonable in most cases is the USF ointment.
Yeah.
Which is basically the paste form of Cataplex F. But what both of those things do is they help to repair damage, but they also help pull calcium back into the tissues.
Yeah.
So that the repairing can also take place that way.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
It's pretty great.
Right? So vitamin E, USF ointment, and or chlorophyll complex on the skin.
Yeah.
And you'll be feeling a whole lot better. Now, there's one thing I forgot to mention when it comes to the prevention, and that's that cod liver oil can be extremely beneficial because it's rich in those essential fatty acids.
Yeah.
The downside to it is that it contains vitamin D. So you're potentially
a lot of vitamin D.
Yeah, you might be
it's very small amounts of vitamin D.
It is fairly small amounts. You're right.
Right.
It's great for winter use to keep your levels up.
Right.
But yeah, compared to what you're going to be producing in the sun, it's probably just a drop in the bucket.
Exactly.
I forgot to mention this. They did a study where they intentionally sunburned people and then they gave them 200,000 IUs of vitamin D.
Jeez.
And that's like, if you're taking a supplement, you're probably taking somewhere between 2,000 and
5,000,
maybe 10,000 if you're extreme. That's at least 20 days worth of vitamin D supplements all at once.
Right.
And what was really interesting about it though, was that it helped a ton with their recovery from the sunburn. It made a big difference there. And basically what's going on is they're brute forcing that calcium in, but that's not a really sustainable way to address your sunburns.
Right.
Because you're going to end up causing even more problems if you do that. One thing that tends to happen to a lot of people in the sun is they break out in cold sores, right? In cankers.
Yeah.
And that's because as the calcium is being pulled out of the tissues, especially if, like me, once again, you've got a virus that's kind of just dormant in your body all the time. Something like, I don't know, Epstein-Barr virus or herpes virus.
Yeah.
Then as soon as that calcium tissue or the tissue calcium is taken away, then bam, the virus flares up. And this has happened to me multiple times where I just like, it looks like I don't even know what.
And how many of our Lyme and chronic fatigue and Epstein-Barr patients would go on vacation during the summer and they'd come back and they're like as sick as dogs.
Super sick. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, you overdid it with your calcium stores.
And once again, they place the blame on the sun, but the sun is not the problem.
Right.
The sun is the life-giving God of our solar system. And we're just not prepared for it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, even our deity is named after the sun almost, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Like
Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Is that what you're talking about?
I guess.
Okay.
But
Sure.
Sure. No, but it's very symbolic. Like sun, like there's so many references to it as far as like deities go and religions and
absolutely
sun worshipers, whatever.
We've been sun worshipers as a species for our entire existence. So, so don't blame the sun for the problems. Blame the fact that you have not prepared yourself.
Right.
To be worthy of the presence of the sun.
Actually, don't blame yourself because that sounds a little bit harsh.
All right,
like,
fine.
Be really gentle with your critical thinking skills and be like, oh, I did something wrong. I'm going to change. Well, not wrong. I don't even use the word.
Let's try again.
I was misinformed.
Yes.
So therefore, when I know better, I do better.
Thank you. I was raised in a system that doesn't understand this properly, and I inherited some very false beliefs about what my body needs. Mm-hmm. How many times can we say that? Probably 15 times a day.
Right.
Every bad habit you have is because you were born into this system that gave it to you.
Exactly.
All right. This is not your fault, not one bit. But now that you've heard this episode, you have responsibility. You no longer have the excuse of ignorance to say, I didn't know better. You know better now.
Right.
You no longer have the excuse to hide out in your house all summer long. You no longer have the excuse of just bathing yourself in disgusting white lotion to protect yourself from the sun. Right. You have to do it differently.
Right.
Otherwise, then it is your fault.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we did this to you. Now you have no choice but to get healthier.
Right. And so, get your kids brown, like get that base coat going, get them in the sun a lot.
Oh, by the way,
don't burn them, obviously. Also, I think know your ancestry. If you are a redhead that burns really fast, obviously go slower than someone who's more olive toned.
Definitely.
And has Italian heritage, don't go at your pace.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's so funny to me how I find how people who eat healthier foods, take healthy supplements, they burn less versus people that eat very inflammatory foods and they burn more, and so nutrition, you guys, is so it really does help protect it helps your body protect itself from the radiation. All right. Yeah. So really be mindful. Okay. Also, isn't it funny how we hit summertime and there's lots of fruits full of antioxidants and it's like nature intended for us to naturally protect ourselves.
Yeah, maybe.
And not only that, but we start off nice and slow with the springtime. Right. It's not like all of a sudden it's like, bam, it's summer from winter. It gradually exposes us to it. It's prepping us for something, right?
Right. So, those of us who were, evolved from northern dwellers, but the people who for the longest time have come from the equator, they don't need warm. That.
Right.
Yeah. The sun's always there, but they're always ready for it.
Right.
Their skin has lots of melanin.
Right.
By the way, that leather skinned woman that I was talking about before from the video I watched in high school.
Yeah.
Maybe if she had protected her skin more with antioxidants, not with sunblock, but with actual internal antioxidants,
right,
she wouldn't have turned out the way that she did.
Maybe.
That's just my opinion. Just my opinion.
We have no idea. Is there anything else we want to cover on this?
I think that's it. I hope this was really helpful for people. I hope that we blew your mind in at least one way.
Right.
Because this is very much against the mainstream. We realize that. But there is lots of evidence to support this approach. This is not just witchcraft or hearsay.
Right.
There's science on this. The problem is that no one cares about science when it really comes down to it. Mm-hmm. They care about what is just what they call common sense. Stuff that wasn't common sense 100 years ago, but now it is common sense.
Exactly.
Which really makes it common foolishness, right?
Totally.
So go out and do sun stuff and do it safely.
Yes, you guys enjoy the sun, like have fun. Again, if you're going to Lake Powell, that's, it's a different story. Be mindful, obviously.
Or if you're going to the beach in California, or if you're going to Hawaii, or if you're going to Costa Rica or the Caribbean.
We're not saying go into the sun unprotected for 2 hours straight with no shade.
Definitely no.
Like, that's not what we're saying. And hopefully that came across and that you learned something.
You are beginners, just like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym the first day and start trying to lift 400 pounds. You start with what you are capable of doing. And if you're like us, you have fair skin and you haven't spent a lot of time in the sun, you're starting with the 10-pound weights, which means basically 10 minutes of sun.
Right.
Before you start looking for ways to protect yourself and modulate how much of that vitamin D your body's producing.
Right.
But also make sure you've got that calcium. If you take some Cataplex F and some calcium lactate a couple hours before you go out in the sun, and then you keep taking the calcium lactate every couple hours when you're in the sun, you may be able to last a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
A lot of people swear by it.
Exactly.
All right, I'm done.
Okay. Sorry, Jess.
What?
While you were talking, I was trying to look for quotes for the membership. So that's why I was.
Oh, did you find one?
I did. What
do you got for us?
I found the, you guys, we like to end each episode with a commentary from one of our members. Last week we had Nina, who is Nourished with Nina on Instagram. She spoke with members about hormones and healing hormones. And we spoke about like eating for our cycles and, imbalances with hormones. And it was really, really enlightening. And I think a lot of people learned about, their symptoms and what could be going wrong. But I asked members last week, I said, what has been your most, because every week we try to check in, like, what's been your most favorite thing this week? What's been the hardest thing? Like, how can we support you? And then we try to address those things in Q&As. And, I wanted to share with you guys, let's see. Give me a second. Okay. So Sandra says the community is amazing. Maybe I'm totally sappy, but I'm often near tears reading the posts and watching the videos. It's probably because I have often felt like I was on this journey alone and had to find all the answers by myself.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful and relieving to be in a community of people who can band together and help and encourage each other on our journeys. And having you, Janique, and Tristan here coaching us along is beyond amazing. Your combined knowledge is more than I could learn in a lifetime. I'm so incredibly thankful for you guys and this group. And I say this every week, but members who are listening, thank you for showing up for each other, because that has been like the magic to all of this. Yes, information is cool, but when people show up with hearts and souls, like it changes everything. Because we say this all the time. You're not just changing the food you're eating, you're changing your lifestyle. Yep. You're changing your baseline. Your cultural baseline, your emotional baseline. And that's hard. Like that is deep work.
You're changing the way you look at yourself, because you stop looking at yourself as this weird outlier and you start seeing yourself as, I'm part of this awesome group and this is what we do. Or
what they say is like when they've had a hard day, they go to the group who's like-minded and they're like, I'm struggling with this. And everyone's like, yeah, I struggle with that too. And so it's just a great space to come to for like refuge. And I just keep seeing, because we can't show up for every comment and every post every time, but everyone else does. They show up for each other. And it's just been really beautiful. And so, we can create the content. We create the weekly, program, the meal plans, but they are the ones that are filling in the gaps. They're like, we provide the bricks and they provide the cement.
Yep.
And we build this beautiful community together. So thanks, you guys. And if you guys are interested in the membership, go to gutsy.ch/membership if you want to join. It's really such a great place to start. If you are just overwhelmed and you don't know. And here's the thing too, is everyone goes at their own pace. You don't have to jump right in 100%, you guys. Nope. When you're making lifestyle changes, do one thing per week and share it with us, and tell us like what was good, what was bad. There was a comment, and I haven't shared this with the members, but I will tomorrow, but I want to share it with you guys, where they mentioned, there's a lot of dishes. And I remember someone, because there is a lot of dishes. And I remember someone giving me this advice. They said, have one plate, one cup, one bowl for each member of the family. That way they don't pile up. Yeah. And that way, if you need a plate, you go and you wash it. And you don't have like all of these plates stacking up, right? And you don't have like multiple loads of a dishwasher full of dirty plates. And so hopefully that's helpful for someone who's listening right now, you know, as well as when we tell members. But anyways, what do you want to say?
I love the group. I just love the way that they are showing up for each other and the way that they help each other feel like this is doable.
Right. And again, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, guys. Like there's a lot of mourning that happens here too. Sure. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of frustration, but you know, you have to recognize that. So if you are on your healing journey right now, you don't have to be in the group to experience these things, obviously. No. But what I want to tell you is if you're experiencing that, that is normal. Okay. And I'm going to go back to the analogy of playing, like learning how to play the piano. In the beginning, it feels awkward. It's a very frustrating experience. It literally hurts your brain and you're exhausted after every practice. And then months go by and it's invigorating and it's easy and you're playing these beautiful pieces without even having to like burn a single brain cell.
Yeah.
And that's because you created muscle memory.
Right.
So this new lifestyle, you guys, it's muscle memory. That's what you're doing. You're recreating muscle memory in your life.
Right.
And in the beginning, you have to mourn the old muscle memory and burn it down and then regrow it. Okay. So be patient. That takes a lot.
It does.
And that's it. That's my pep talk.
So if you're the kind of person who finds yourself devouring our podcast episodes and just waiting for the next one to come in each week, you might want to consider doing the membership. Yeah. Because it's like having the whole thing on tap.
Totally.
So that's all I'll say about that.
That's it, guys. Until next week, thanks for listening. Please rate or review.
Just share it with everybody.
Yes, please. If you
share it with your dermatologist. Make them listen to us and hate us.
I don't want any hate. They might fire you as a patient. Don't do that. But share it with a friend.
But maybe you do.
Or whatever you feel called to do. Do it.
All right.
Until next time.
We love you guys. Bye.